What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the college football semifinal betting preview. I'm Stucky, and joining me as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Colin Wilson. 3 games left. That's it. We'll cover both today. We'll have a little fun, throw out we were tasked with giving out a same game parlay for each game. I got Penn State, Notre Dame. Colin has Texas, Ohio State. Colin, I see you made it home safely.
Yeah.
You sober up from your Twitter tirades.
Yeah, I think you get out in the sun, the Arizona sun, and you have a bottle of New Year's Day Vouv. You're laying by the pool, and everybody starts piling on you for Arizona State plus 13 in the first quarter. It was one of those kinds of days. But no, I'm glad I'm back from the desert. Ran into the blizzard number one, and I'm in a very small window where I get to potentially drive and navigate blizzard number two, which is hitting the Cotton Bowl for everybody that is traveling.
I'm completely snowed in here. So just not that I would be going anywhere right now, just diving into these 2 games, NFL. We have our NFL podcast tomorrow, basketball podcast on Thursday. So make sure you check all those out. College basketball podcast on this channel, NFL podcast, Action Network podcast. But let's get right into it. We'll start with the first college football playoff semifinal game on Thursday between Penn State and Notre Dame. It is the Capital One Orange Bowl in Hard Rock Stadium. Notre Dame currently a 2.5 point favorite, total sitting around 45-ish. So when I break this game down, there's some injury watch for both teams. By the way, these two teams have not met since 2007. It's cool to get these matchups with the expanded playoff. We're more likely to get some of these, you know, historic programs meeting each other, which I think is really cool. These two teams haven't played since 2007. The all-time series is 9-9 with one tie. So the first to reach 10 will get to this year's national championship. Injury questions. Notre Dame side, how healthy is Jeremiah Love? Had a brace on. Don't think he's going to be 100%. How healthy is Howard Cross, who's even more important with Riley Mills out for the year? And then Penn State, all eyes on Abdul Carter, whose importance can't be overstated. I mean, he's first round draft pick lock. He leads the team with 11 sacks, second nationally, 21 tackles for loss. But even more important than that, the attention that he draws opens up everything else for the others along that Penn State defensive front. Reading the tea leaf when it first happened, I thought he had a torn pec.
Mhm.
Reading the tea leaves, it might be like a joint sprain. Uh, Reading like his post, it looks like he's going to play, but how healthy will he be? How, will it flare up? Will he aggravate it? Will he be able to go at full strength for the full game? I don't think anybody knows that except
No,
maybe not even him.
let me
That's a
let me say this.
Yeah,
So he did not practice at the media viewing portion during Sunday. That is the last time the media will get their eyes on Penn State in practice. He wasn't available. What he was viewed with was a lot of tape on his shoulder, and Franklin said if he can play, but how effective will he be? In so many words, he said, we don't know the effectiveness of how much he would have, if he does play in the game. So physically able to play, how much can he affect the game? That's the problem.
yeah, and he could have he he'd be going up against Anthony Knapp, the left tackle for Notre Dame. He's allowed a 13% pressure rate through 2 playoff games. That's problematic against Carter. Carter also can be used as a spy at times, and he has the speed and physicality to match Leonard. And Penn State, for what it's worth, has done an excellent job against mobile quarterbacks all year. Now, they haven't really faced many or any of the caliber of Leonard. I go back to like Garrett Green, week one. He had 10
Mhm.
carries for 5 yards, 8 for 20 if you remove the sacks. Kevin Jennings of SMU, he had 8 carries for negative 25 yards, 5 for 11 if you remove the sacks. But Penn State in general does a really good job against the quarterback run game. We'll see if Leonard can get loose here. Because when I look at this game, look, it seems like everyone in the world loves Notre Dame, I think including you. I make Penn State a favorite here. I will be on Penn State. I'm waiting, sitting at 2.5 now. I'm going to wait to see if it three pops. I'm going to wait to see if I can get more intel on Carter because I do think he matters, and he matters to the spread, and he matters to how this game will play out. But look, I just can't see this. Let me start. I'll start with Notre Dame as the ball.
Yep.
I don't think Notre Dame's going to have sustained success. And if they do, getting to scoring range, they're going up against an elite red zone D, second nationally. There's going to be more field goal attempts than touchdown celebrations. The good news for Notre Dame is Mitch Jeter appears healthy, which is huge because they were 13 of 24, I think, on field
Right.
goals before last week. He was clearly not healthy. He clearly is now, and he was 3 for 3 last week against Georgia, all from 40 plus. That's important. And what I think will be a lower scoring game. I was shocked to see this total open at some shops at 50.
Yep.
It's now down to 45. I make it like 44-ish. It's under or nothing for me at 45 or above. Notre Dame team total also is in play. The Penn State run D is elite. They can load the box here. Notre Dame is just very limited on the outside. And I think you have to attack Penn State through the air. Now, without Carter, we saw Boise State start to have more success last week. So that's why his status is important here. But you just
Yep.
look at the last two games for Notre Dame against Indiana, it was 198-yard run. Other than that, Indiana's defense held them in check. Last week, they scored 23 points. 14 of those 23 came within a minute span off of a strip sack, short field, and a kick return for a touchdown. It's not like their offense did much. I think the adjusted box score had them as a small loser in the game. So I just don't see Notre Dame's offense doing much. I don't think Riley Leonard and these pass catchers can consistently move the ball through the air against a nationally elite defense. I
I,
think it's going to be a
I
struggle.
I'm glad you started on this side of the ball because I think it's a complete wash. I think the other side of the ball is where you and I are going to get into our differences. So to be real quick here, Jordan Love, he was at the open practice on Sunday for Notre Dame, limited.
Jordan Love will play
I'm
on.
sorry, Jeremiah Love. I'm about to get to Jordan Faison. I've got all my J's mixed up. Jeremiah Love was available at practice, but extremely limited, wearing a brace. And frankly, I think it was more the whispers I'm hearing. It was more of show so that they have to plan for it. Tight end Cooper Flanagan is lost for the season against Georgia. He only averaged 21 snaps per game, but that is a part of a heavier package that they use for blocking the inside zone and the man blocking, the gap blocking that they do with Love. They use Riley in a ton of man and gap designed runs. I think what happened in the Sugar Bowl was once they didn't have Jeremiah Love, they used Riley Leonard complete inside zone, and they used Jadarian Price to completely line up and just man gap block through A, B, and C. And you look at Leonard, I mean, he's the one that had the 32-yard explosive. He created 6 missed tackles as a quarterback. That is huge. Price never had a single run over 8 yards. I don't expect any of that to change against Penn State. Maybe they can contain Leonard. I think the one quarterback you didn't mention, and I went through the same exercise as you. I looked at all those quarterbacks, Will Howard, Garrett Green. I wanted to strip away their scramble yards and look at their designed attempts. Will Howard, 9 designed attempts, only 34 yards. Demon Williams, right, for Washington, 10 designed runs, 38 yards. He busted a 43-yard scramble. To me, that was a little important because we know Riley Leonard will take off if he has to, but he was held, pretty low on designed runs as far as attempts go. So I think it's a wash on this side of the ball because Leonard's going to see 28% man. Penn State runs a lot of man. We're going to talk about man-to-man coverage on the other side of the ball. Mostly he's going to see cover one. It's just a wash, like success rate 53 to 55%. That's mid FBS. I think the one thing that's notable, Stuck, there were some players during the Boise State game in the Fiesta Bowl that had some small injuries. Like, middle linebacker Kobe King had a little small injury during the Fiesta Bowl. There were a couple of other players that showed some hurt. Now they're all available at practice and they're practicing, but you can see the playoff take a toll on this Penn State defense the farther we get.
Well, I also will say Penn State has a couple extra days of prep and rest, which
Yep.
doesn't hurt this time of the year based on how the schedule broke. Great. This is a great coordinator matchup. I also was really impressed with Marcus Freeman last week. I thought he basically won them the game. I mean, their special teams were great. I thought he outcoached Kirby Smart.
Can I
Um,
say something real quick? Can I say
yeah,
something? Marcus Freeman is not Dan Lanning level. He will take chances and he does make great calls. I think he's calculated and he can be aggressive.
yeah,
One
he'll
thing
be aggressive on 4th and 1s anywhere on the field.
one thing that came out of Penn State's presser, and it's the first time I ever heard it. James Franklin said, I'm the one that tells Andy Kotelnicki, which we're going to this. I'm the one that tells Andy Kotelnicki when to be aggressive and when to be conservative. And I think that answers a question that you and I have had all season. Who's calling the plays? Andy Kotelnicki's calling the plays. Franklin is the one that has always dictated conservative versus aggressive. So it's important to remember.
Yeah, I do think Notre Dame has an edge in that aspect. But moving on to the other side of the ball, great coordinator matchup across the board. Like the X's and O's, the chess match here between Al Golden, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in college football, and Andy Kotelnicki, who's one of the best offensive coordinators. I don't think it's going to be easy for Penn State. They're going to face just a ton of cover one. There's going to be press man on the outside against Penn State's underwhelming receivers. You're going to have, and then they have two just really good safeties. Notre Dame does, led by, of course, Xavier Watts, who's going to be roaming a lot back there. You'll see a lot of cover one robber, and I expect them. There's a lot of they're going to blitz a ton. They're going to try to shoot gaps, use stunts, try to get in the backfield, try to. And Penn State's offensive line is vulnerable, even though their right tackle Rucci, who filled in for the original start, has been playing better of late. There's still some vulnerable areas, especially against the blitz, and you saw that at times against Boise State. Notre Dame's going to bring it. They're going to keep guys in the box. They're going to try to slow down Allen and Singleton, and then they're probably going to be looking very hard at that Ohio State tape and how they handled Tyler Warren. And I don't know if Watts can't, he's in the free safety. They like to give him a lot of freedom. I don't think he'd be able to stop Warren one on one. He's from
They're
a
going to
size
try
perspective.
man to man. They're going to put them heads up and they'll see if it works. You're right, though.
Yeah, but from a size perspective, I don't necessarily think that'll work. I expect them to bracket Warren like Ohio State did. Ohio State has excellent safeties too. They bracketed Warren a lot. So I think there's going to be extra attention on Warren. I think Notre Dame's going to load the box here, try to stop the run. How does Penn State move the ball? Because I think in this game, there's going to be a ton of runs, with two slow-paced offenses. The clock's going to be moving throughout. Both teams are going to lean on their defense, feel each other out. It's why, like, under to me, I think is the look, even though its numbers come
Mhm.
down a bit. But the way that you have to beat this Notre Dame defense is you have to throw outside the hash marks, and you have to throw deep, and you have to take shots. Look no further than the USC game. And Jordan Maeda, that's all he did the whole game was just throw down the sidelines. And now, granted, USC has much better receivers than Penn State. That's Penn State's weakness, and that's one of the reasons Notre Dame's even going to lean into it even more, saying, "Hey, press man on the outside with our corners, and then our safeties, linebackers, defensive linemen are all dedicated to slowing down Warren and the run game. And then if Penn State's receivers can beat us deep, hat tip to them." So can the questions for me is can Penn State's offensive line protect and especially against the blitz and some of the stunts they're going to see? That remains to be seen. Number two, who will step up on the outside? The obvious answer is Harrison Wallace.
Yes.
My answer is my favorite prop in this game, which I put in, and it will lead into my same game parlay. Omari Evans, over 20 and a half receiving yards. I, I think he can get this in one catch. I mean, he averages, I think, 19.8 yards per reception, which is top 30 nationally. I think they're going to try to take a couple deep shots to Evans. And if you look, he only got one target between weeks 9 and 12. He has 17 over the past 5 games. Average routes have jumped from 13 and a half per game to 20. And over this most recent 5 game stretch, he's caught 9 passes for 177 yards, cleared 20 and a half yards, his 20 and a half yardage prop. 4 of those 5 games, he had at least 49 in 3. And I don't expect Penn State to run away with this game, like the SMU game, which just they could just then run it and they didn't have to throw it in a favorable game state. So yeah, I think they're going to take some shots to him. He's the fastest guy on the team. He's really coming to his own. He's a ton of confidence now. He's a guy that was raw. Like he was a quarterback in high school. Touchdowns in back-to-back games. Had a touchdown against Oregon, touchdown against Boise State. Or did he have a touchdown against SMU? I don't know. He had two touchdowns, and I know he had a touchdown last week. Touchdowns in two of his past three games. I do know that. So I think Amari Evans is going to get, I don't know, two to three deep shots at least here, and he's going to have opportunities. I think maybe four-ish targets is what he's going to end up with. So he might end up being the key to Penn State winning this game because I think that they're going to have to hit the receivers are going to step up. They're going to have to hit explosives on the outside with their receivers, which has been a major question mark all year. Notre Dame knows that. Notre Dame does this anyway, but they're going to allow for opportunities. Ken Wallace or Evans make the plays. I think basically that's what this comes down to. My same game parlay for this, Evans, anytime touchdown, 25 plus yards, Notre Dame team total under 23 and a half. I think that's the formula for Penn State to win. It pays 11 to 1 or plus 1080. Um, so yeah, look out for Amari Evans. I think he might be the key to Penn State against this heavy cover one, heavy press man that's going to be focused on taking away Singleton and Allen and most importantly, Tyler Warren. I thought about some Singleton props because I do think that Kotelnicki's going to have to use some misdirection to kind of use that Notre Dame aggressiveness against them.
Mhm.
They're going to have to get Singleton involved in the passing game some. But one, like they're going to have to use their backs. Like last week, you had to use Singleton a ton in blitz pickup. Two, do you trying to forecast the split between Allen and Singleton is tough. Allen is the better pass protector and blitz picker upper, so he might get more snaps here. So I just wanted to stay away from.
Which they're going to need.
Yeah, they needed it last week. That's why Singleton. I don't think he had any catches last week, right?
Right, right,
So he was used in blitz protection a ton. So Evans is my favorite prop over 20 and a half.
right.
I don't know. It's probably going to move because I just bet it. And I can't bet a ton on these things. 24,
Okay.
23 and a half is fine. Um, and that's my same game parlay. I like Penn State. I make them a favorite. I also like, since I like Penn State, I like the under. Probably go with Notre Dame team total under Penn State. I'm waiting for the three. I make them a favorite here. You like Notre Dame? I
Yep.
think it'll be a super close game. Like, and the one thing that scares me is what you just talked about is that is Freeman going to make more plus EV decisions and be while James, small game James, turtles up and gets too conservative. That is a real fear of mine in a game that should be super tight. But I got to play my numbers here with Penn State. Um, what say you? What are you seeing here?
Don't blame you at all. Like I don't listen. If you're following me in the app, then you got a cheap Notre Dame money line. If you're following Stuck, you're going to get a Penn State +3. And this is how you play the game. You play props on the over early. You play props on the under late. That's just how you handle this market. I gave this side of the ball like the national championship treatment. I went as deep as I possibly could. So we'll start with the run game. Katron Allen created 9 missed tackles against Boise. Why is that amazing? Because he averaged 2.3 missed tackles forced before the Fiesta Bowl, like per game, and he created 9. I think maybe that goes to show how bad Boise State's tackling was. He did have 4 rushes over 10 yards. I'm going to give a lot of that to Boise State's defense being second to last in tackling. Now, you mentioned Rucci at right tackle, center Nick Dawkins, among the best run blocking grades of the offensive line. Left tackle Drew Shelton, consistently the worst all season in run block grades. So you're going to see Singleton, Allen go off to the right. And what is Penn State run all the time? Outside zone. What have we been screaming since Service Academy games of Notre Dame? They cannot defend inside zone whatsoever. The defensive interior is where to attack them. But that's not what Allen And Singleton do. They go straight at the tackle. They go straight at Rucci at right tackle or whoever's going to be in that spot, and they try to bounce out and create an explosive. Irish have the advantage here completely. 58% success rate against outside zone. They allow a big play on only 6%. And if Penn State wants to switch off and do, gap man, straight up hand off the ball, Notre Dame 67% against that success rate, only allow a 6% big play rate. I think the Penn State offense on the ground is probably going to average 2.5 to 3 yards per carry, and it's just not going to get pretty and it's not going to get first downs. Now, when we go to this passing game,
Do you agree with me that they got to hit explosives to the receivers?
they do, and is Kodal Nicky watching the USC tape. And I say that because if you want to beat Notre Dame, I think this is the prototype. USC came out and had a 10-play drive to start the game, turnover on downs. After that drive, Lincoln Riley threw everything away and had 16 of the next 22 first downs start with a pass. They had a 50% first down rush rate before that. Like they went ham on first down pass. And
And
that is
like, I think Maeda threw it 48 times. I think maybe 35 of them were outside the hashes.
after that first drive, they were like, screw it. We're going pass and we are going at them. I think it's worth noting Kotelnicki's what he does in scripted and what they do in adjustments. Kotelnicki, a very respectable plus 5.8 points offensively in the first quarter, one of the highest second quarter totals at 12.5. You can adjust against Kotelnicki, and he is going to be able to adjust back. It's the second half where he has really cooled off. So keep that in mind if you're live betting a total. Like I agree with you completely on the total. I just think if Kotelnicki has some success, which I'm going to get to the receivers here, like you mentioned, I think he will have success in the first quarter until Al Golden, the defensive coordinator of Notre Dame, realizes what's going on, makes the changes. I think the second half is going to be fascinating, which Golden should rule. Now, Aller, let's talk about Drew Aller because you've heard me chirp just all year. This kid does not make mistakes in a pressured pocket. Well, I got my eyes on him the entire game. And I've kind of changed my opinion of this kid. He's going to see a ton of man coverage here from Notre Dame. He's going to see some cover one. He's been pretty good against that 59% success rate. He's got a high EPA, but look at the defenses maybe that he's faced. I think the problem for me is what happens when he gets pressure. Now, Notre Dame is, let me talk about the passing real quick. Notre Dame is seventh in contested catch rate. There is one corner you can pick on. It's Christian Gray, and he always lines up at right corner. He's always on the right side of the offense. He's allowed 3 straight games of opposing quarterbacks' NFL rating to be over 100. In those 3 games, USC, Indiana, and Georgia, 15 catches on 22 targets. He has allowed a ton of yards. And you ask who will be lining up against him? I love Amari Evans like you do. He is hot. He is rising. I don't think he's peaked, but he's going to draw Leonard Moore. And Leonard Moore has been fantastic in single coverage. Harrison Wallace is the one that's going to draw Christian Gray. So in the app, I did put in Harrison Wallace over 41 and a half yards. If you want to go head to head on Evans yards versus my yards number for Wallace, we can do that and put it on the board if people need a board bet. But I think Harrison Wallace is the one that's going to be picking on Christian Gray simply because these two, it's exactly where they line up. Now, let's talk about the rush because this is where I made the bet on Notre Dame. And I was
I mean,
immediate.
to be fair, with Evans lined up wide, well, last week he lined up in the slot 12 times,
Yep.
left 12 times, right 12.
Right.
So maybe he'll get some looks at because I agree that Gray can be a little flat-footed at times,
Yes.
and he's attackable.
Yeah. And it seems like that's like Harrison Wallace's spot.
I don't mind Wallace overs either. So
Yeah.
Penn State has to hit explosives. There's going to be opportunities to do it.
Yep.
Um,
But there's a problem, and it's the pressure. Um, Boise State for the first quarter was dominated. And you know why they were dominated? Because defensive coordinator Eric Shenander sent 4 rushers.
yeah, and they couldn't get any pressure with
Couldn't get
four.
any. Then they decided to go 5 plus. And there is tape out there on YouTube, and I mention it in full preview over on Action Network, and I give credit to the guy that made this tape. Boise State started doing axe crossers. They started using their defensive tackle to stick Nick Dawkins, the center, and they used a linebacker to loop around. Here's the problem. Not only did that offensive line have a hell of a time ever picking that up, Drew Aller went up to the line of scrimmage and switched the protection multiple times in the second, third, and fourth quarter. And every time he did it, he was wrong. The Penn State offensive line would shift left, they would slide right. They missed every single time. So as
Well,
much as
also Singleton's not great in pass play. He missed some blocks too.
he's not, but Allard changed the protection, and Dawkins like you can see Dawkins nod, turn around, tell the line, then they slid the wrong way. It's on Allard. It's completely on Allard. And here's the other problem. Yes, he has not created a turnover worthy play in 130 something pressures this year, right? Because he doesn't throw it away. The kid is incapable of throwing the ball away. He had one throw away on a rollout that was, I thought he was going to break his leg just running. He takes way too many sacks. And to give you an idea, who is one team on the schedule that really gave them a lot of problems, gave Penn State problems that you didn't expect? It was Minnesota. When you look at Minnesota, SMU, Boise, and Ohio State, they all generated double digit pressures. In those games, Aller took 11 sacks and he only had 3 throwaways. Yeah, he won't put you in jeopardy by throwing an interception because he doesn't throw it away at all. He will tuck it and take a sack, and that completely takes Penn State's offense out of the mix. Also, 2.9 seconds before release. And I get it. Sometimes you're waiting for Tyler Warren to float from the left side of the field to the right side of the field, and some of those passes can be long. But that's a real number that is just not going to fly at the NFL level. So you look at what Notre Dame did. Al Golden must be watching those axe crossers by defensive tackles and the linebackers and the loops and just dreaming up schemes of where he's going to bring pressure because the offensive line, Allard can't ID it. The offensive line slides the wrong way. And Notre Dame, what you saw against Georgia was a masterpiece. And I think you're going to see it again. Notre Dame, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 13 pressures against Georgia's offensive line. That's a real problem. And I think Penn State, a lot of drives are going to end on that. And if Allard cannot pick up protection packages, we're going to get our shots with our wide receivers stuck. We're going to get them. But I think Allard is going to take them out of drives by his bad decision making and telling Nick Dawkins where the protection should be. So I'm on Notre Dame money line. I agree with I make it 2, so I agree with you. 3, you got to buy it. That's just the smart way to play this.
Yeah, I'm at Penn State a favorite. Do you want so for uh I'm up 10-8 in head to heads. Do you want to put Penn State Notre Dame? I'll give you even money on money line.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
listen, we're the podcast that came out. I said Notre Dame, Ohio State national championship. I'm not backing off of that.
By the way, I talked about a future last week. Notre Dame versus PSU. Ohio State plus 350, plus 340 there it was.
Yeah.
Guess who forgot to bet it? Me. Now they're favorite, but there's
did
a
did you have a
minus
bottle of Vouv? What happened here?
110. Completely slipped my mind. I'm so mad. So hopefully a couple of you listen. By the way, for the long shots and the same game parlays, you can follow all of the same game parlays and all the long shots from our experts who are much better than I am. Uh, in the Action app, all in one place. Just follow Parlay Express. Although I am 6-1 in player props. This my one loss was Nick Singleton over receiving yards. It's been a really good bowl season, betting wise, but it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. So hopefully these 2 games in the national title go well. Let's move on to the second semifinal game on Friday between Ohio State and Texas. I believe they've only played 3 times
Yep.
in the past, the last being in 2009. This game will be played Friday, January 10th, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. And it's the Cotton Bowl Classic. I always want to say it's at the Cotton Bowl, but it's now in Arlington. A little bit of a home field advantage location wise for Texas. I gave them a half point.
Especially if everybody from Columbus can't fly in.
Yeah, that's true as well. Uh, I gave them a half point. You could argue it's not worth anything, but so to me, oh, I should say, as of right now, Ohio State's sitting as a 6 point favorite. Total is 53 and a half. Believe that's been holding steady. So to me, this game is very difficult because this is basically just comes down to a market question. You know, I said Ohio State's going to win the title after what I saw against Tennessee. I said I know it was narrative but I think that they're going to take that Michigan loss and it's going to fuel them to the national title. And then they've looked unbelievably dominant the past two games. But during the regular season, it was not that way. You know, they almost lost. They arguably should have lost to Nebraska at home. They lose to Michigan at home. It wasn't pretty all year. Did they just turn it on and this is the team that we can expect? Because in a way, yeah, they just looked apart. And I mean, I'm assuming they're going to take a ton of money. Most of the bets are going to be on them. But, and part of me says that they're the best team in the country by far.
Hmm.
The talent was always there. But also the other part of my brain says, I mean, just from a buy low, sell high perspective, I mean, is this just the highest, the peak that Ohio State's ever going to be? And
Your conundrum is 2019 Joe Burrow LSU
yeah, but they at least looked good
all season. Yeah.
all season. This makes it even more difficult. And because Ohio State hasn't, but yeah, I mean, it's just if they're going to look like that, maybe the market hasn't caught up enough. So I was all set to bet Ohio State, but after bumping Ohio State a lot the past 2 weeks because they looked so dominant and downgrading Texas, I was only at around four. So at six, I show value on Texas. And but here's the thing. So numbers wise, I came in wanting to bet Ohio State, but I can't at six. Numbers wise, I should bet Texas. But here's the thing, Ohio State, not only have they looked great the past 2 weeks, Texas has not looked great. And I'm a bit worried that their defense might be overrated because coming into the college football playoff, I had them it's a top five defense right there with Ohio State. But if you look during the regular season, they lost to Georgia twice, including the SEC championship. Here are the teams they beat: Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Vandy, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. There's not a top 25 offense. Maybe you could argue Texas A&M. They're right on the fringe. They faced Florida with like their third string quarterback. They faced UL Monroe when General Booty was still the quarterback.
They didn't cover against
Mess.
Taylor Green in Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, but just from an that was probably one of their most impressive defensive performances.
Yep. Yep.
That game, uh, the Texas A&M game, they shut down Texas A&M, but I think ultimately the Texas A&M offense was overrated because they got a bump from like two games where they surprised other teams with a quarterback. But then you go into the college football playoff. Clemson is arguably maybe a top 20 offense. I have them between 20 and 25. Clemson moved the ball at will on them. And Cade Klubnik was throwing all over them.
Hmm.
And then Arizona State, without their top receiver, was able to move the ball. Sam Levitt, he wasn't really efficient throwing the ball, but Cam Scadaboo ran for 143, had 100 yards receiving. It wasn't the prettiest offensive output. It looks a lot better because they went to overtime and they scored 31, but they moved the ball better than I thought as that game progressed, and they were able to come back and they scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. So is the Texas defense overrated? And then I have questions about the offense in that, number one, why couldn't they run the ball against Arizona State? That's extremely troubling because everything for that Texas offense stems off of the run game. I mean, Wisner and Blue had 22 carries for 49 yards. Like, what? Against Arizona State's undersized defensive line.
Right.
Is Ewers healthy? Like, is he still dealing with stuff? Like, his ankle is oblique. I also think he has just deficiencies in general. Are their tackles fully healthy? Isaiah Bond, is he fully healthy? And if they can't run the ball, are they going to be able to have Ewers consistently drop back and throw against this Ohio State defense? I have my doubts. So, and then the other side, I do like the Texas secondary. And then you have the Jim Thorpe Award winner, Jahdae Barron, going up against Jeremiah Smith, who I would take number one in the draft this year, and he's not even eligible till 2027.
Hmm.
But Barron's at a significant size disadvantage. Like, are you able to just put him one on one on Smith? I don't know. So I'm so conflicted on this game. Curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, that Jeremiah Smith thing versus Barron is more like college basketball when the big guy comes down at the rebound, you're trying to pop it out of his hands.
Because
Let's
Jeremiah
start.
Smith is like, uh, I mean, he is unbelievable. Like DK Metcalf, Julio Jones vibes.
Which side of the ball do you want to start on first?
So let's start with the Texas defense. Is
Uh,
this defense overrated?
well, first off, I'll
Because
say that there's an ACC crew here, so I've already
get
done my.
ready.
Yeah, get ready. Listen, is it justified? I think we should start with power ratings that people respect. If you respect mine, I'm at 3. If you respect Sagarin, they're at 3.2, and if you respect SP Plus and Bill Conley, you're at 4.8. Nobody's at 6. That doesn't mean that Ohio State can't cover. It just means that's the reason you're hearing a lot of conflicted bettors like myself and Stuckey. They're like, what are we looking at here? The Ohio State offense and defense is real. And we talked about the Rose Bowl at
I know
length.
one, but for what it's worth, I know one person I really respect that is at right around 6. But
Are they
it just
higher or
comes
lower?
down to like
Are they
how
higher or
much.
lower?
Right at
Right
6.
at 6. Okay.
It's it comes down to how much do you upgrade. Texas also, I think, gets down like how much do you downgrade Texas
Right.
for the past 2 games,
And you listen
and
to
then how
Sark.
much do you upgrade Ohio State for like separating just these two data points? It's very difficult to do versus their whole season because the potential was always there. They didn't really live up to it, but now like were they holding things back? They've unleashed the offense. The talent is there, and like just that aggressiveness in how you adjust Ohio State
Yeah.
uh, is not an easy thing to do this late in the season.
And you listen to Sark, his words. We had a bad game against Clemson, against Arizona State. His words. They executed what Kenny called. They executed. So his words, right? So when are we going to get the Texas team that we've seen all season, who's only taken losses to Georgia, right, and no one else? Let's start on the Ohio State offensive side of the ball. So the whole dynamic has changed because Chip Kelly has stepped out of his running grit mode and wants aggressive downfield passing. Will Howard over the last 2 games has been perfect. 5 big time throws, no turnover worthy plays. It's interesting to note that the Rose Bowl, there were only 3 wide receivers that caught passes. The 2 of them, Emeka Egbuka out of the slot, Jeremiah Smith at the wideout position. There's nothing wrong with this running game. There's no reason why they decided to go pass instead of run. Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson,
But the
dangerous.
pass opens up the run even more.
Right.
Um, and then, by the way, this offensive line seems to be coming together as well.
Yep. And Chip Kelly is still running inside zone, outside zone. He can run any run concept he wants. They had 179 yards. The Texas defense, Pete Kwiatkowski's 3-3-5 has just been destroyed over the middle. It was the reason you and I spent 30 minutes just haggling over Clemson, Texas, and the point spread, and I wanted 14. Is like I knew Texas was going to get attacked over the middle with tight end Jake Brenningstool and slot Antonio Williams. Texas just couldn't stop that. Arizona State, the reason I took that number, I knew they were going to go over the middle with Cam Scadaboo and Melquan Stovall. They had 19 targets over the middle. So the numbers for the Sun Devils, though, I think where I can start to make a case for Texas, because this is how you have to handicap this game. Is there an avenue for the Longhorns to cover? Not win the game. Can they cover? And here's where we start. The Sun Devils went over the middle too. 19 targets to those 2 names that I mentioned, but they didn't get a lot of yards after catch. And they didn't produce a lot. The one person that is consistently having problems, that has not cleaned up their coverage grades, is outside linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. That is the piece that everyone's going to go after. I expect Trevion Henderson to attack the middle directly. He averaged 1.8 receptions per game over the season, but he's had 9 targets in the last 2 games. Henderson is going at Anthony Hill of the Texas defense. His season average is 14.7 yards receiving, but he's gone 19 yards or more receiving in 6 of the last 7 games. I took Trevion Henderson over receiving yards in the app. I love that for that perspective because I think the safeties and the corners, everybody else cleaned up their grades. Jalen Gilbo, Malik Muhammad, they both came to respectable season long coverage grades. Anytime TD on Emeka Egbuka probably at play depends on the price because he will line up in the slot and go over the middle too, and sometimes get matched up on a linebacker that he can take advantage of. The problem is he's had 10 TDs on the season. He only had two in the last 5 games. Either he's due or he's just not a part of the package in the red zone. So the only prop that I like for Ohio State on the offensive side is Henderson receiving yards because he's going straight at that linebacker in the middle. The Jeremiah Smith thing is interesting. I would actually let that number float on his yards and maybe take the under. I think Barron is going to find a way to get enough stops for him on the outside. He's just been a savior at the corner position. He was playing nickel. They moved him to the outside, 5 interceptions, 9 PBUs. There's a reason he won the Jim Thorpe. That is a great matchup that on the all 22 is going to be fascinating. From a rushing perspective, Texas, the defense just struggles with inside zone. And this is where I'm like, is Chip going to go back to running the ball all the time? They Texas defense cannot defend inside zone. I expect Henderson and Judkins to feast on the inside, and the Texas defense is 75th in missed tackles allowed. So I don't see a lot of resistance, but I've
They're
seen,
going to put Smith in the slot at times too, which is also just a cheat code, which
boy,
is scary.
that's bad. If you can live bet a Smith TD, if you see him line up in the slot, that'd be something. But I think overall, I've seen everybody clean up their coverage grades, clean up their yards after catch, except for linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. So I'd see more hurdles than what Oregon threw up. I see more hurdles than what Clemson threw up. I'm sorry, more hurdles than what Tennessee threw up from a defensive perspective. I do think Texas can try to keep this within the number. It's the other
Yeah, I mean
side of the ball.
The Texas secondary is significantly more talented than the Tennessee secondary.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the other side of the ball that put me on Texas +6, which I am invested. I think the number's too high, and I think there are reasons. So, on the other side of the ball, red zones and finishing drives have not been a problem. The Peach Bowl saw 3.9 average yard for finishing drives. If you look at the two playoff games for Sarkisian's offense, 8 trips to the red zone, 4 touchdowns, 2 field goals. He would take that any day. That's above season average numbers for what he does in the red zone. We mentioned that Arizona State and Quinn Ewers last week. What was my big prop? Him to go over his passing yards. I think it was 260, somewhere around there. Well, the handicap was that he dominates cover one. Well, he ended up with 322. And the heaviest package used by Jim Knowles and his nickel defense is cover one. And we talked at length in last week's podcast about the movement of Jordan Hancock back to the single high safety to allow Caleb Downs to roam. The reason Ohio
He's
State
so
is,
good.
yeah, and the reason Ohio State has been so elite on defense is because no one's getting past these guys on the ground. Like they're not giving up explosives. They are elite tacklers. But let's talk about coverage for just a second here. Jordan Hancock is not the greatest coverage single high safety. If you go and look at his receiving grades, he's going to be matched up one on one against Matthew Golden in a couple of downfield shots. Now, remember, I'm going to get to a point that really made up my mind on this game. But Matthew Golden has been on fire. 10 targets against Arizona State for 149 yards. He's had 309 receiving yards in the last two playoff games. He gets one on one with Jordan Hancock. He can take one to the house. So I would like Matthew Golden's yards on the over for a prop, but he's only had one TD in the last 5 games. I'd stay away from anytime TDs. As far as I have no expectations Texas can run here. We mentioned it, Wisner, Blue. The stat that I tweeted out
And
after
Ohio State's run D the last couple weeks. I mean, granted, there were some, they were in favorable game states, and both Oregon and Tennessee had running back injuries,
right.
which is worth noting. But man, they were stout up front and weren't allowing just any holes or any opportunities for backs. I'm just so concerned that everything flows from the Texas run game. They
Right.
couldn't run it against Arizona State. That's
Right.
very
And
troublesome to me because I don't know if I trust Ewers to just drop back without play action, without the screens, and consistently move the ball to keep up with Ohio State.
I think there's two things going on. The one tweet that I put out where Oregon was stuffed on 18 of 20 carries. Listen, the national stuff rate is 30%. You stuffed 18 of 20 carries. That's absolutely insane. And Knowles, his defense dominates outside zone. I don't expect Texas to run the ball at all. So I go back to Hancock, who was actually in the game plan against Oregon. Oregon targeted him 7 times, the highest he's been targeted all season. They caught 5 against him, and he gave up 24 yards after catch. That is the avenue for Texas in the passing game. Then let's go to Ewers and blitz. I think I've finally figured out why Sark has stuck by Ewers the entire year. These numbers, for some reason, I concentrate more on pressure in my handicap than I do the blitz, right? It's two different things. You can create pressure with three, you can create pressure with four. But what happens when you're sending extra guys on stunts? These numbers are crazy. Like, not only do Ewers kill cover one, but he's 20%, 8% of Ewers' dropbacks have had blitz. He's produced a moderate success rate of 50%. His EPA is through the roof. When Ewers has seen blitz, 12 TDs to 4 INTs, a 22.4% big play rate. And if you want to go even farther, when he sees five or more, Ewers has 15 big time throws to 3 turnover worthy plays. The place to attack Ohio State is Sonny Styles and Cody Simon, the linebackers. If Ewers sees a stunt in cover one, he's going to eat Ohio State's defense up. Sonny Styles, Cody Simon, the linebackers of Ohio State, gave up 15 catches on 16 targets in their last game for 146 yards and 77 yards after the catch. I want a Gunnar Helm, the tight end, the one who's catching all the touchdown in both playoff games. I want a Gunnar Helm anytime TD for Texas. Ewers is elite against cover one. Ewers is beyond explosive when it comes to identifying blitz when teams send five or more. So, is there an avenue for Texas? That's the handicap, everybody. Is there an avenue to cover the points? My answer is yes. Ohio State by 5, 4, 3, fine. At 6, there's an avenue for Texas.
Yeah, I like Helm targeting Helm props. I might have some Helm props. I also, because of Barron's size disadvantage, I might go like put Barron on Igbuka and then Bill Belichick this, and then have a have help on Smith. Just I don't know. I'm curious to see how they end up playing that.
Any possibility that Sark and Kwiatkowski is kind of base defensing this until this point?
It's possible. I mean, here's the thing. Other thing that I'll put Texas for an
Are we
agree. We're
agreeing at 6?
34-24. I'm going to put Texas on the board, the agree tab.
Okay. All right. As I feel after
I mean, my numbers show value in it,
after
and
the Twitter tirade, I felt like I was on an island with this Texas thing. I've felt all week like I'm on an island with this Texas thing, but I did my due diligence. I did my X's and O's. I did everything.
my numbers show value in it, but I'm just afraid that I'm not aggressively like Notre. And I do have my concerns about Texas, so it's not like my favorite bet ever,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
do show value in it. I will say also psychologically, one of the reasons I like Ohio State to win the national title, and again, it's narrative, is that they were embarrassed, they were written off after that Michigan game, right? And then you saw them against Tennessee. Everyone already written them off. They came in that game hair on fire, dominated from the opening snap. Then they're underdogs. I mean, excuse me, like they're playing a team, they're small favorites. They're playing a team that already beat them in Oregon, undefeated. Now they win those two games. Everyone in the world is crowning them national title champions. Go listen to anyone talk about college football right now. Ohio
Yeah.
State's winning it all, right?
Yeah.
Do they come out with that same fire that was fueling them from a just a human perspective? Or do we see like a flat, I know it's a playoff game, but just like do they have that because we've seen them be flat. How are they not up for Michigan? Now, some of it was play calling. Um, but the Nebraska game. So like that psychological edge, does that now go to Texas? Like Texas comes in as the underdog. Uh, just something
Did
worth
you
noting that I
did you put in
thought
your
about.
did you put in your handicap that Bevo, Matthew McConaughey, and the Undertaker will all be on the sidelines for Texas? I'm
Yeah,
just kidding. There is room for Bevo in AT&T Stadium. There wasn't in the Peach Bowl.
which would be nice. But yeah, so maybe we'll be the only ones on Texas Island. Hook
Yep.
'em. But it's not the most confident I've ever been in a bet.
Agree.
I'll tell you that. Do you have a same game parlay for this?
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize everything, I would Texas plus 6. Travion Henderson, I took it 19 and a half in the app before we recorded podcast. I saw 20 and a half. Travion Henderson over 20 and a half receiving yards. Gunnar Helm, anytime TD, I saw it plus 220. That is a plus 1060 single game parlay.
All right, good stuff. That'll do it for us. Thanks to Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. We do have one more episode, which we will record. Man, it's the national title's not till the 20th. So we will record on Thursday, January 16th, preview the championship, some prop looks we like, side total. By the way, I think the Ohio State Texas total is basically right.
Mhm.
And then we will have our award show spectacular. Hand out the gambling Heisman, voicemail, best of the voicemails, voicemail caller of the year, et cetera, et cetera. Be a fun recap episode. So make sure you check us out. By the way, college basketball, I'll be making my debut on that this week, Thursdays for those episodes. But that will do it for us. Enjoy the semifinals. Enjoy a blissful weekend of football. Not many games left, only three in college football, but we have college football playoffs on Thursday, Friday, then NFL playoffs on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Action Network podcast for the NFL Wildcard Weekend betting preview. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a 5-star review. Really helps us out. We will catch y'all later in the week. Cheers.
Peace out.